We've got a really shocking case to talk about today, one that comes to us from Bangalore. It's a story that starts with what was supposed to be a romantic gesture, a Western-style proposal, but ends in an absolutely horrific act of violence. So let's unravel how a story about love allegedly became a story about a meticulously planned murder.
She intended to propose to him in a Western style. That right there, that was the initial explanation given to police. It's a phrase that sounds almost innocent, right? But as investigators would very quickly find out, it was just a cover for a truly chilling and deadly plan.
So here's where it all starts. It's the afternoon of Sunday, April 21st, 2024. Emergency services get a call sending them to a residence in Bengaluru's Anjananagar. And what they were about to walk into would turn this quiet neighborhood into the center of a major homicide investigation.
Inside the home, the scene was just grim. They discovered the body of 27-year-old Kiran. And at first glance, you might think, okay, maybe it was a suicide. Neighbors had seen smoke, they called it in. But as the investigators started to really process the scene, they noticed details that they didn't add up. Details that pointed away from suicide and toward something far more sinister.
And this was the first huge red flag. A blindfold. That's not exactly something you see in a typical suicide, right? This one piece of evidence was enough for police to immediately suspect foul play, and it completely shifted the direction of the case from a personal tragedy to a potential homicide.
So naturally, all eyes turned to the only other person at the scene, Kiran's 27-year-old girlfriend, Prima. And when they questioned her, her story was, well, it was simple, maybe a little too simple.
She told them she was in the bathroom the whole time, had no idea what was happening until she saw the smoke. She basically painted this picture of herself as a shocked, grieving witness to some horrible accident. But that story? Yeah, it was about to completely fall apart.
As police started poking holes in her story, a very different and frankly bizarre narrative came out. She admitted she set the whole scene, invited him over, blindfolded him for a so-called surprise, and then tied his hands and legs to a chair. And when he asked why the ropes were so tight, she apparently just told him it was all part of this elaborate, foreign-style proposal. A deadly performance was already underway.
But here's the thing. This whole surprise proposal story just did not line up with the hard, physical evidence. And that's when investigators started taking her story apart, piece by piece.
And this is where her story just completely implodes. Just look at this breakdown. She says it was a suicide, but the evidence shows he was tied up and blindfolded. How does that work? She claims she was in the bathroom, but nope, CCTV footage says otherwise. And the whole he set himself on fire thing? Well, turns out the fuel was already there waiting. None of it made any sense.
So, what's the big takeaway here? This was not something that just happened in the heat of the moment. This points to a calculated plan. The victim was restrained, the fuel was already on site. And maybe the most disturbing part? Police started to suspect she might have actually filmed the horrific incident on her phone, turning what was supposed to be an act of love into a spectacle of violence.
Okay, so if we rule out a proposal, and we definitely rule out a suicide, what's left? What was the real motive here? To figure that out, investigators had to dig deep into the couple's relationship history.
Turns out, they weren't just a couple, they were co-workers. They both worked at a V-store in Rajajinagar and had been together for over a year. So their lives were pretty intertwined, professionally and personally. On the surface, it all seemed pretty normal. But underneath, police now believe, something really dark was growing.
And that brings us to this key legal term, premeditation. What does that mean? Basically, it means this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime of passion. It was planned out. The evidence, like having fuel ready, suggests she thought about this and prepared for it long before Kiran ever walked through that door. In the eyes of the police, this was straight-up cold-blooded murder.
So why? Why would she do this? Well, police think they have the answer. They believe Prima felt that Kiran was pulling away, ignoring her, and maybe even dodging the whole topic of marriage. And that feeling of being ignored, they allege, just festered and twisted into this deadly rage that led to this horrific act.
All right, so let's get up to speed. We have a suspect in custody. We have a possible motive. Where does the case stand right now, and what's next?
So after they questioned her and the evidence just kept piling up, Prima was arrested. And now she's officially facing a murder charge, which was filed based on a complaint from Kiran's, you can only imagine, completely devastated family.
But you know, the investigation is far from over. Forensic teams are painstakingly putting together every little piece of the timeline, and they're digging into all that digital evidence, especially that alleged cell phone video, to build a case against her that is absolutely rock solid and proves just how much planning went into this.
You know, a case like this just leaves you with this really tough, unsettling question. How does affection turn into this level of extreme violence? It's a chilling reminder of the dark path that can lead from feeling neglected to meticulous, deadly planning. And it makes you wonder how a proposal could be twisted into the perfect cover for a murder. It's a question that, in this case, will now be left for the courts to answer.